Henry sat alone in his cozy living room, the dim glow of the evening sun casting long shadows on the wooden floor. The gentle hum of a distant piano melody played from the radio, stirring something deep inside him. A memory, a longing. Decades ago, Henry had dreamt of becoming a concert pianist. Music was his soul's language, the place where he felt most alive. But life had other plans. Responsibilities piled up, and his dreams took a back seat. Now, at 65, retired and alone, he often wondered, was it too late? One crisp autumn afternoon, fate intervened. As Henry walked through the town square, he spotted an old cafe, its rustic charm inviting him inside. There, seated in a quiet corner, was a familiar face. His former mentor, Mr. Whitmore. The elderly man, now in his 80s, still carried the same aura of wisdom and kindness. Seeing Henry's distant expression, he smiled knowingly. Lost in thought. Again, Henry? Mr. Whitmore asked, stirring his tea. Or perhaps, lost in time? Henry sighed. I just wonder. Did I let my dream slip away forever? Mr. Whitmore chuckled. But the mind is a powerful thing, my friend. It's never too late to reignite the fire within. You just need to learn how to harness the power of your subconscious. Curious and eager, Henry leaned in. Tell me more. And so began a conversation that would change his life. If you're enjoying this story and find inspiration in Henry's journey, don't forget to leave a comment below. Share your thoughts and experiences. Have you ever rediscovered a passion later in life? Also, support our channel by liking this video and subscribing for more uplifting stories. Your engagement helps us bring more content like this to you. Lesson 1. Clearing the mind. Mr. Whitmore leaned forward, his eyes twinkling with wisdom. Your mind, Henry, is like a garden. If it's overgrown with weeds, doubts, regrets, fears, there's no room for new seeds to grow. Before you can move forward, you must clear the clutter. Henry furrowed his brow. But how do I do that? Awareness is the first step, Mr. Whitmore said. Start by observing your thoughts. Are they filled with self-doubt? Do you often tell yourself that it's too late? Write these thoughts down. When you see them on paper, they lose some of their power. Henry nodded. That night, he sat at his kitchen table with a notebook. He wrote every doubt and fear that had held him back for years. I am too old to learn something new. I missed my chance. No one will care about my music. The next morning, he returned to the cafe, notebook in hand. Now what? He asked. Mr. Whitmore smiled. Now, we replace those thoughts. For every limiting belief, write a counterstatement. Instead of saying I am too old, say now is the perfect time. Instead of I missed my chance, say every day is a new opportunity. Your mind will believe what you tell it. So be kind and intentional. Skeptical but willing. Henry rewrote each statement. He repeated them out loud, hesitantly at first, then with growing conviction. Over the next week, he practiced this exercise daily. Slowly, his thoughts began to shift. Clearing the mind isn't about erasing the past, Mr. Whitmore reminded him one afternoon. It's about making space for the future. You're not too old, Henry. You just need to believe in the possibilities ahead. For the first time in years, Henry felt something stir within him, a quiet excitement, a sense of possibility. The weeds were clearing, and in their place, new seeds of hope began to take root. Lesson 2. Trusting yourself. The next afternoon, Henry arrived at the cafe, eager for his next lesson. As he settled into his chair, Mr. Whitmore gave him a knowing look. Tell me, Henry, he began, when was the last time you made a promise to yourself and kept it? Henry hesitated. I'm not sure, he admitted. I suppose I've made plenty of plans, but I often let them slip away. Mr. Whitmore nodded. That's the problem. Trust isn't just about trusting others. It starts with trusting yourself. If you constantly break your own promises, your subconscious mind learns that you are unreliable. It stops believing in your potential. Henry's brows furrowed. But how do I fix that? Start small. Mr. Whitmore advised. Make a promise to yourself. Something simple. Something you know you can do. It could be practicing the piano for 10 minutes each morning. The important thing is to follow through, no matter how small the commitment. When you do, you send a message to your subconscious that you are dependable. Henry decided to test this advice. That evening, he made himself a promise. He would sit at the piano for at least 10 minutes a day, no excuses. The first few days were easy. He felt motivated and excited, but on the 5th day, he was tired. He almost skipped his practice. But Mr. Whitmore's words echoed in his mind. Reluctantly, he sat at the piano, played for 10 minutes, and felt a quiet satisfaction afterward. It's not about motivation, Henry, Mr. Whitmore said when they met the next day. It's about consistency. Every time you keep your promise, your self-trust grows. Over the next few weeks, Henry's confidence started to shift. As he kept his promises, something inside him changed. He no longer felt like a man who had let his dreams slip away. He felt like someone who was reclaiming them, one step at a time. Mr. Whitmore smiled as he saw the transformation unfold. Trust yourself, Henry. When you do, your mind will work with you, not against you. Henry nodded. For the first time in years, he truly believed that he could. Lesson 3. The power of affirmations. Henry, words hold immense power. Especially the words we say to ourselves. Mr. Whitmore began. Your subconscious mind believes what you tell it repeatedly. That's where affirmations come in. Henry leaned in, intrigued. Affirmations? You mean just saying positive things to myself? Mr. Whitmore nodded. Exactly. But it's not just about saying them. It's about believing them, feeling them, and making them a part of your daily routine. Henry frowned. I'm not sure I can just tell myself something and expect to believe it. That's a common concern. Mr. Whitmore said with a knowing smile. Let me explain how it works. He picked up a sugar packet from the table and held it between his fingers. Think of your mind like a field. Every time you say something to yourself, you plant a seed. Negative words plant weeds, while positive affirmations plant strong, healthy crops. The more you repeat something, the deeper the roots grow. Henry nodded slowly. So, if I keep saying something negative, I'm reinforcing it? Exactly, Mr. Whitmore confirmed. And the same applies to positive thoughts. Let's try an experiment. What's something negative you often say to yourself? Henry sighed. I tell myself I'm too old to start again. Good, Mr. Whitmore said. Now, let's turn that into a positive affirmation. Instead of telling yourself you're too old, say, I am never too old to pursue my passion. Say it now. Henry hesitated, then repeated softly, I am never too old to pursue my passion. Louder, Mr. Whitmore encouraged. Say it like you mean it. Henry took a deep breath. I am never too old to pursue my passion. A few heads turned in the cafe, but Mr. Whitmore simply chuckled. See? Didn't that feel different? Henry smiled. A little strange, but yeah, it did. Now, Mr. Whitmore continued, repeat it every morning when you wake up and every night before bed. Look at yourself in the mirror. Say it with confidence and truly believe it. Over time, this new belief will replace the old one. That night, Henry sat by his piano and reflected on their conversation. He thought about all the times he had doubted himself, all the dreams he had locked away. He decided it was time for a change. He whispered to himself, my music has value and brings joy. I trust myself and my abilities. Every day I am improving. I am confident and capable. At first it felt awkward. as if he were trying to convince himself of something he didn't quite believe. But each day, as he stood before his mirror, saying these words with conviction, he felt a shift. The hesitation in his voice faded. The affirmations weren't just words anymore. They were becoming his truth. A week later, when Henry met Mr. Whitmore again, the old mentor could see the change in his student. There was a new energy in Henry's eyes, a quiet confidence that hadn't been there before. "You've been practicing, haven't you?" Mr. Whitmore asked, smiling. Henry grinned. "Every day. And you know what? It's working. I feel more confident, more capable, like I actually believe I can do this." Mr. Whitmore placed a reassuring hand on Henry's shoulder. "That's the power of affirmations, my friend. When you change your words, you change your reality." Henry left the cafe that day feeling lighter, as though years of doubt had begun to fade away. He was no longer the man who feared he was too old to dream. He was someone who believed in himself, in his journey, and in the music that had always been inside him. Lesson 4. The Power of Visualization. The next afternoon, Henry arrived at the cafe earlier than usual. The affirmations had started to change something deep inside him, but he was eager to learn more. Mr. Whitmore was already there, waiting with a warm smile. Henry, now that you've started believing in yourself, it's time to take the next step," he said. "Have you ever heard of visualization?" Henry shook his head. "I think I understand the concept, but I've never really tried it." Mr. Whitmore leaned forward. "Visualization is about more than just seeing something in your mind. It's about experiencing it as if it's already real. When you close your eyes and truly see yourself achieving your goal, your subconscious mind begins to accept it as reality." Henry furrowed his brows. "So, I should just picture myself playing the piano." "Not just playing," Mr. Whitmore corrected. "I want you to imagine everything. The way the stage feels under your feet, the warmth of the lights, the applause of the audience, the feeling of your fingers dancing across the keys. Let it be vivid." Henry closed his eyes. At first, it was difficult, but as he focused, he could almost hear the music, feel the excitement in the air. He pictured himself on stage, playing with confidence and passion. A sense of joy washed over him. "How do you feel?" Mr. Whitmore asked gently. Henry opened his eyes, a little surprised. That was incredible. It felt real." "That's because, in a way, it is," Mr. Whitmore said. "Your mind doesn't distinguish between real and imagined experiences. The more vividly you visualize success, the more your subconscious mind works to make it happen." Over the next few days, Henry made visualization a daily habit. Each morning, before touching the piano, he closed his eyes and imagined his future self, playing for an audience, feeling proud and accomplished. The more he did it, the more natural it became. One evening, after finishing his practice, he realized something remarkable. His playing had improved. He was hitting the notes with greater confidence, moving with more fluidity. It was as if he had already been performing on stage for years. When he next saw Mr. Whitmore, he couldn't contain his excitement. "It's working. I feel like I've already been there. Like I know exactly how it will feel when I finally play, in front of an audience." Mr. Whitmore smiled. "That's the magic of visualization, Henry. When you see it clearly in your mind, your actions naturally align to make it a reality." For the first time in years, Henry didn't just dream of playing on stage. He knew it was only a matter of time before he would. Lesson 5. The Power of Meditation and Mindfulness. A week had passed, and Henry was already noticing profound changes in himself. His affirmations gave him confidence, and his visualization exercises filled him with a sense of purpose. But something still felt off. His mind, though more positive, was often restless, jumping between thoughts of the past and worries about the future. Mr. Whitmore seemed to sense this as they sat across from each other at their usual spot in the cafe. "Henry, now that you've planted the seeds of belief and visualization, It's time to learn how to tend to them. You need to quiet your mind and be present. That's where meditation and mindfulness come in. Henry took a sip of his coffee. I've heard about meditation before, but I don't know if I have the patience for it. My mind is always racing. Mr. Whitmore smiled. That's exactly why you need it. Meditation isn't about stopping thoughts. It's about observing them, without attachment. Think of your mind like a river. Thoughts will come and go, but you don't have to jump in and be carried away. He leaned back and continued. Let's try something simple. Close your eyes and focus on your breath. Feel the air entering your lungs, then slowly exhale. If a thought arises, just acknowledge it and return to your breath. Henry hesitated but did as he was told. He closed his eyes and took a deep breath. At first, his mind wandered. He thought about his piano, his past regrets, what he would eat for dinner, but with each breath, he gently brought his focus back. After a few minutes, he opened his eyes. That was harder than I expected. Mr. Whitmore chuckled. It always is at first, but with practice, it becomes second nature. The key is consistency. Just 5 minutes a day can make a difference. Over the next few days, Henry made it a habit. Each morning, before touching his piano, he sat in stillness, focusing on his breath. He found that his racing thoughts slowed, and for the first time in years, he felt a deep sense of peace. Mindfulness followed naturally. He became more present in everything he did, whether sipping his coffee, walking through the park, or playing the piano. He noticed details he had long overlooked. The warmth of the sun on his skin, the rich aroma of freshly brewed coffee, the feeling of each piano key beneath his fingers. One afternoon, he shared his experience with Mr. Whitmore. It's incredible. I used to rush through everything, but now I feel like I'm actually living in the moment. Even my playing feels different, more expressive, more connected. Mr. Whitmore nodded approvingly. That's the power of mindfulness, Henry. When you're truly present, life becomes richer, and your subconscious mind aligns effortlessly with your goals. Henry smiled. He had spent so much of his life either regretting the past or worrying about the future. But now, for the first time in a long time, he was simply here. And that was enough. The weeks passed, and Henry felt like a different man. He had cleared his mind of doubt, built trust in himself, embraced positive affirmations, visualized his success, and cultivated mindfulness. Yet one challenge remained, taking his music beyond the walls of his home. One morning, as Henry sipped his coffee in the cafe, Mr. Whitmore slid a flyer across the table. It was an announcement for a local community recital. It's time, Henry, the old mentor said. You've been preparing for this moment, whether you realize it or not. Henry stared at the paper, his heart pounding. The idea of performing in front of an audience thrilled him, but fear still lingered. What if I make a mistake? What if people don't like my music? Mr. Whitmore chuckled. Then you'll learn. But tell me this. Why did you start playing the piano in the first place? Henry closed his eyes for a moment, recalling the joy he had felt as a child. His fingers dancing across the keys, losing himself in the music. He wasn't playing for applause or perfection. He was playing because it made him feel alive. Taking a deep breath, he nodded. All right, I'll do it. The night of the recital arrived. Henry stood backstage, hands trembling. He closed his eyes and took a slow breath, recalling everything Mr. Whitmore had taught him. He repeated his affirmations, visualized his success, and centered himself in the moment. As he stepped onto the stage, the bright lights momentarily blinded him, but he forced himself to focus on the piano in front of him. He placed his hands on the keys, exhaled deeply, and began to play. The first few notes were shaky, but then something remarkable happened. His fear melted away, replaced by the sheer joy of the music. He wasn't thinking, he was feeling, living, in the moment. letting the notes flow through him. The audience disappeared. It was just Henry and the piano, together as they had always been. When he played the final note, silence filled the hall for a moment before applause erupted. Henry looked up, stunned. People were standing, smiling, clapping. Backstage, Mr. Whitmore greeted him with a proud grin. "I knew you had it in you, Henry. How do you feel?" Henry laughed, wiping a tear from his eye. "Like I finally found myself again." As he left the venue that night, Henry knew this was only the beginning. He had spent years doubting, hesitating, and waiting for the right moment. But now, he understood. Life wasn't about waiting. It was about believing, acting, and embracing each moment as it came. And with that, Henry stepped into the future, not as a man full of regrets, but as a musician, a dreamer, and most importantly, as someone who had learned to trust in the power of his own mind. Thank you for joining Henry on his journey of self-discovery. His story is a reminder that it's never too late to follow your passion and trust in your potential. If this story resonated with you, share your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever faced a similar challenge in rediscovering yourself? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications so you never miss an inspiring story. Your support helps us bring more content that motivates and uplifts. See you in the next journey of transformation.